how to paint a fall bouquet full-length tutorial. I'm working on a 12-inch by 16-inch canvas, and I'm marking the 3-inch line with my T-square ruler because that's going to be the table line. I have burnt umber, Mars black, and titanium white on my palette, and I'm using a 3/4 inch flat brush. I used a 3/4 inch flat brush to mark that line and then continue on to the above part. So we're going to paint the background above the table line first. And this background consists of the titanium white and burnt umber. So double load the brush in mostly white, a little bit of burnt umber, and paint these expressive strokes that start in the middle and then work your way outwards. And I guess the direction I'm going, I'm making like little X's, diagonal lines, kind of going in all different directions. By doing so, that gets your two colors to blend together. And we want the background to be interesting, so that's why I'm using the two different colors. The middle part of the background is brighter, so it's got mostly white, and then around the edges it's darker, so I'm adding more burnt umber as I go to the edge of the canvas and the bottom of the canvas as well. Okay, the more that you go over your strokes, the more your colors will kind of blend together. And if you keep doing this, eventually it is all going to be the same color. So at some point you want to kind of decide how unblended you want it to look. And also it's tricky to get the strokes to really kind of go away if you don't like the look of seeing the strokes. I do, because it makes it look interesting and expressive. But you can also keep going and kind of having a smooth color if you want to smooth out all your strokes, or you can just paint the background in one solid color. So what I'm doing is I'm just continuing to blend the colors back and forth, flip-flopping my brush. Remember that there's more burnt umber on the brush towards the edges of the canvas and the bottom, and there's more white towards the middle. Okay. The focus of this painting is not the background, so if you mess up on the background, or if you decide, oh, we're just going to make it all one solid color, that's fine, because the focus is the vase, so we don't want to fret too hard about the background. And so I am continuing to flip-flop my brush to smooth out some of these strokes, kind of blend the color, but still leave it unblended and expressive. And then I'll go back in there with the white and add a few white strokes here and there. Okay, when you're done with the background part, we're going to do the table, the bottom of the table. And you'll need burnt umber and Mars black for the bottom part of the table. And also, I want to mention that now would be a good time to paint the sides of your canvas. So you see me doing that there. You don't see me doing all the sides, because I cut that out of this video. But now is a good time to do the sides of the painting if you like to paint the sides of the painting. So the bottom, the table part, is a double load of burnt umber and Mars black. Okay, so about equal amounts. It's going to look black because of the black, but the brown kind of makes it look like a really, really dark brown. But with the equal amounts of black and brown, it'll look pretty much almost black. Okay, so you can vary that if you don't want it to be too black. You can add just a little tiny bit of black and more brown, so it's up to you. But using the T-square ruler kind of helps to get that line in there. Even though we painted the line in the beginning, it helps to kind of define it again. Okay, and so we're just doing left and right strokes. I'm still using the 3/4 inch flat brush. And then also paint the sides of your painting this color as well. Okay, you'll want this to completely dry before moving on to the next step. The next step, we're going to use chalk to draw our pumpkin. So I have a piece of white chalk, and I'm starting at the bottom and drawing a kind of a flat looking curve. It's the bottom of the pumpkin. And I'm going to do the left and right curves on the side. This goes up to about 6 inches. Okay, so if you wanted to measure 6 inches high, you can do that. Okay, and the width is probably around 8 inches. I didn't measure the width, but I know the height is 6 inches. And then I drew the opening part, so it kind of dips down like the pumpkin has been carved out. Okay, so that's pretty simple. Okay, we're going to go on and do the bumps of the pumpkin. So when I do the pumpkin bumps, I start in the middle and draw an oval in the middle. So here's my oval, and the top and bottom curves of that oval give you the bottom and top bumps of the pumpkin. So it kind of goes over the line that we drew. Okay, the left and right curves are not ovals, they're just curves, and they are continuing off of the previous oval that I drew. Okay, and you should be able to only fit one more curve on the side because that curve is already drawn in. So I just kind of redrew that in there. Okay, and we have our pumpkin base. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to paint the pumpkin in. I'm going to start with my 3/4 inch flat brush in titanium white. So really simple. I'm painting the middle oval in a solid white, and when you paint this in, you want your strokes, I'm using the full width, but you want your strokes to kind of contour with that shape. So I'm going rounded on both sides of that curve, and then in the middle I go kind of vertical. So right there in the middle, kind of a vertical stroke, and then a left and right curved stroke. And it's a pretty solid color. We'll add a cream color to it later. Okay, I switched to my number 12 bright because these bumps are smaller, but I'm going to kind of do the same thing with the titanium white using the full width of the brush. And it's not an oval right here, it's a curve. So I'm not painting in an oval, but I'm painting the direction of my stroke is going in the curved direction of that bump. Okay, and I am purposely leaving that little tiny slot in between the oval and the bump because that's going to represent my pumpkin line. Okay, so I'm doing it again to the left bump, and this one's going this direction. And then I can use my brush, kind of the tip of it on its side, to get into that little area. Make sure I leave a slither of that background showing through so that I see the line. Okay. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the far outer part of the bump. So the direction of the brush is going in the direction of the curve, leaving a slither where the bump line is. And same thing over here. And notice how at the top I purposely made it look like it had a bump at the top. So I kind of curved my brush, and I did that with all of the bumps. There's the curve at the top, and then at the bottom part you have the bumps at the bottom of the pumpkin as well. Okay, so it's not completely flat, and that was done simply by painting the brush a certain way. Okay. Then I'm going to dip my brush in the unbleached titanium, and I'm just going to do some strokes of this unbleached titanium to kind of get it to look kind of interesting. And one thing about this unbleached titanium is that it's a really opaque color, and if you use too much of it, then go back and add more white to your brush, and it'll kind of dull the unbleached titanium down. So we want it to be mostly white, but with a few streaks of that cream color. I call it cream color, but it's unbleached titanium. And I'm adding this to each of the bumps. So a streak of the unbleached titanium, and then go back with the white. I'm doing this on this bump right here, and then the far left bump of the pumpkin, going back with a little bit of white and doing some streaks of the white. You just want to be careful, because if you keep painting over and over, it's going to turn into a solid color. So you don't want to, you want to avoid that. Okay. I just went back in and did a few kind of a bold white streaks of the white. Okay, we're going to go in and do some more detailing with the lines of the pumpkin and do some shadowing. Okay, so I rinsed my brush off completely, and this is the burnt umber. And just at the top of the pumpkin, I'm using the full width and I'm dragging it. These are a dry brush. So when you dry brush, well, when I dry brush, I like to wipe it off my paper towel, just because I don't want a lot of paint on the brush, and it gets your stroke to be like the paint's running dry. That's the point. It's a dry brush. So I want it to be light and feathery and not solid and thick. Okay, and then I did this just at the top part, just kind of dragging it down full width to get a little bit of shadow right there, because that's a dark area where the flowers are going to be kind of hanging over. So essentially we would see some shadowing up there. Okay, then I'm using the tip of my brush just on its side, also dry brush, so wiping it off on the paper towel, but I'm outlining these pumpkin lines. The pumpkin lines are already there, so you don't technically have to do this with the brown, but I did. And just using the tip of the brush, follow it around, and I even did the outer two line parts of the pumpkin. Okay, and then I went back and did the bottom part of the bumps. Okay, so same thing what I did at the top, but I'm doing it at the bottom because there would be a little bit of shadowing down here too towards the table. Okay, so again, dry brush and just kind of gently, lightly drag your brush just to get a little bit of brown at the bottom. And then I'm not going to go any further with this. I'm going to leave my pumpkin base like this. And I'm going to move on to the roses part of this bouquet. And for my roses, I'm using a number 4 round brush and the color Napthol, I'm going to have a hard time pronouncing this red, Napthol Crimson. It's a really bright red. And so we're going to paint 3 circles, and circles are about 4 fingers high. You saw me lay my fingers down to kind of get a width estimate. Okay. And so this circle right here, so 4 fingers width diameter circle, and it's overlapping the base, the pumpkin. So it's kind of hanging off of the edge there. So you're going to have to paint over the pumpkin a little bit. Okay, so I'd say it's about halfway hanging over the pumpkin, about halfway not hanging over the pumpkin. Okay, and then I'm going to add another circle over here about the same size. And this one is going to be a little bit higher than the first one that I painted. And I'm painting my circle, but I'm also making my my stroke direction go in sort of a spiral. Okay, and then I guess I'll have this one overlapping just a bit, but not overlapping it as much. And so I'll do another one up here. And you can place your roses in other areas. I did play around with the design of this painting quite a bit to find the arrangement I was okay with. So this is what I came up with, the roses in this position. So, but if you want to change it, you can. And then, so I need to make a darker red color, and I'm going to make a shade of red. So we're mixing a tiny bit of black with the red, and I'm just using my round brush to mix the colors on my palette here. So I dragged a big chunk of the red and just a little bit of the black, and you kind of need to play around with that because if you add way too much black, then you're going to have just black. So you only want a little bit of black in there and a lot of red. So it needs to be dark enough so that it shows up. And if it's not dark enough, like that first stroke was not really dark enough, so I went back and added just a little bit more black in there. Okay, and we're going to start in the center of that rose, and we're going to do these curved strokes. Okay, and I'm just going to kind of work my way around. I'm not doing a full circle, I'm just doing curved strokes, working my way to the edge of the circle. And on the edges, the curved strokes make that circle shape into a flower shape. Okay, and I'm going to repeat this to all three of my circles. So starting in the middle, making curved strokes that kind of almost like if you're painting a brick where it's staggered, but it's not like a brick pattern staggered. Okay, and then so again, start in the middle and work your way out, doing the curved strokes. They're staggered, they're not all in the same position, and then work your way to the edges, and so that our circle forms into a flower shape when we get to the edges. Okay, and then we're gonna do a lighter color. So I'm gonna mix red with white this time around to make a tint of the red, which is, it's going to look pink. So when we mix red and white, we get a tint of red, and kind of play around with that, kind of a medium color. We don't want it to be too light, but we want it to be lighter than the initial red color. I'm going to do the exact same thing. Okay, so it kind of helps to twist your brush to get that paint right there on the tip of the brush. But I don't want to go over my dark strokes because one, it would cause it to smear. And another reason is I don't want to lose those dark strokes. If you're finding that yours is smearing, then stop and dry your painting real quick because we don't want it to smear. My paints are drying super fast in my environment right now, but if yours are smearing, then get a blow dryer and dry it really quick because you don't want it to smear. Okay, so I'm doing the same thing. I know this is going a little bit fast here, but the same exact thing, and it creates the illusion of the rose with the lights and the darks and the red. Okay, so very simple. And then I like to go back in and make little black dots in the center. Just kind of draws your eye to the center of the rose. So rinse off your brush and just grab the black on the tip of your brush. Okay, and then you're just going to make little tiny dots right there in the center. It's going to be kind of hard to see on the video here, but they are very tiny dots. Okay, you can kind of see it better in that one. Okay, and those are my roses. And then I recommend that you let the roses dry before going on to the next step. My drying time kind of cut out of this video, but I am now they're dry now in this part of the video, and I'm using my chalk to draw the sunflowers. So we're just going to draw basic sunflower here. And I'm going to decide where the center of the sunflower is, but we also need to think about how these petals of the sunflower are going to have to interact with the roses here. So I decided my two centers are in the areas that I drew them. And then my petals, I'm going to try my best to get my petals to kind of go around the roses as much as possible, but eventually I'm going to have to make a decision about overlapping. So I'm going to try this drawing. I'm overlapping this rose here, but then I need to make a decision. When I paint the sunflower in, am I going to have the yellow go over the rose, or am I going to have the yellow go behind the rose? For now, I'm going to have it go behind. So I'm drawing my petal to make it look like, okay, I'm going to paint the petal behind that rose. And then the same thing with this sunflower. You're going to have to decide when you do your petals if you want them to overlap or go behind. I'm going to have this one overlap this rose right here. You'll see me later in the video when I actually paint the petals in. I'll change my mind a couple times. Okay, so the chalk erases really simply. You can just use your finger and erase it, or you can dip your finger in the water and erase it, clean water. Okay. So when you're kind of happy with the placement of your sunflowers, then we are going to paint them in. If you're not happy at all, you can get a wet paintbrush and just erase everything and start over. Okay, that's why we drew it with the chalk first. So I know that's not clean water, but I was showing you how that erases with the wet finger, or you can use a wet paintbrush to erase too. Okay. When painting the sunflowers in, I started with the center. So I'm using brown, so burnt umber, And the same round brush I used to paint the roses, so the number 4 round brush, and we're just painting the circle in right here. So a solid circle, and just kind of like I started the rose, so kind of a spiral sort of stroke direction, painting that in. If you like a darker look in the center of your sunflower, you can even add a little bit of Mars Black into the circle color. Okay, and the brown is kind of see-through, so you may need a couple strokes. You can always wait for it to dry and then do your petals and then go back over with more of the brown to get it another coat of paint on there so it's nice and solid. Okay, rinse your brush off all the way and load your palette with Cad Yellow Medium, and I recommend freshening up your Titanium White at this point. Okay, Cad Yellow Medium is a see-through color, so mixing it with the white is recommended to get your yellow to be nice and opaque. Otherwise, you'll have a see-through yellow and you'll have to apply several coats to get it to be not look like there's brown showing through the petals. So mixing the white and the yellow together will create a light yellow, and you can, to get some more interest in your yellow, you can not mix it all the way on your palette, and when you go and reload your brush, you can grab different amounts of the white and the yellow. That's what I did with my sunflowers because I didn't want them all to be the same exact tint of yellow. So I go back and I add maybe more Cad Yellow in one of these petals, so it might be a little bit darker, but it still has the white on it, so it's still going to be opaque. And then maybe in another petal that has more white, so it's up to you. If you just want to paint them in all the same color, that's fine too. Okay, so I'm just filling in the petals, really simple. And then it gets kind of, you get a little nervous when you got to paint over your rose. So I did that there. And then the petals that are behind the rose, you'll just have to paint up to the rose and not go over it. Okay. If you accidentally grab brown from the center part of the circle, that's okay. Kind of right there, you see what happened. It grabbed the brown, and that's okay because I kind of like that. I kind of made myself grab the brown on all of these petals because the brown mixed with the yellow kind of gives it that sunflower look with the brown dragging into the yellow. Okay, so here we have that petal that I'm deciding it's going to go behind that rose, and they're going back over my petals here. And then we'll go back over that circle again to get that circle to be nice and solid again. Okay, so I'm going to go on to my other sunflower and do the same thing, the yellow and the white. Fill it in. And since I like the look of that brown, I'm going to try to see if I can drag some of that brown into it again. And then right here was a little bit tricky. I wanted that petal to go behind the rose, but this one wants to be in the front here. Okay, and some of these petals that are kind of hiding, we don't really want to lose them, but we still want to fill them in. Then I'm just going back in and filling it in nice and solid, grabbing different variations of the white and the yellow, so it's not all solid the same color yellow. And then since I really liked the look of that brown, actually what I'm doing right here is I'm adding another petal that's kind of going over that rose right here. So that's what I did. I didn't even draw that petal in. I went in and just kind of added it myself. Okay. And then right here, I'm going to experiment with that brown. You don't have to do this if you feel kind of nervous about it, but I just went in with a little bit of brown. I actually added that brown to my brush, just a tiny bit, and just to do that kind of shading with the brown towards the center of the sunflower. And then I went back with more yellow over the brown so that the brown didn't take over my petals. Okay, and getting this, you see how translucent that is, but when you add the white, it goes opaque again. So I have another petal right here that is overlapping my rose. Okay, and then if your circle in the center got kind of messed up like mine did, you can always go back and paint the circle again. Or if you like that look, it kind of looks like the petals are kind of curved and folded, folding over the circle. But I went back in there and I wanted to redefine that circle shape again. So use the burnt umber again to go back and redefine it. Next, I'm going to do some texture in the middle of those sunflowers. So I'm rinsing my brush off and I'm going to add the Unbleached Titanium to the tip of my brush, and I'm going to do little dots right there in the center. So that gives you your texture, the fuzzy middle part of the sunflower. And if you want to do some more colors in there, you can add black and brown, so you can go back in and do black dots and brown dots, or you can just do simplify it and do the Unbleached Titanium dots. When we are done with this step, we're going to switch back to our 12 bright. Okay, here's my 12 bright, and I'm going to get my dark brown. So I'm mixing black and brown, so Mars Black and Burnt Umber, and we're going to do some wheat things hanging out. So I'm going to do 3 strokes right here, tip of the brush, to make those lines. So I'm going to start at the bottom and very gently, very lightly, so swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. You want to hold the brush very lightly, kind of vertically on the side to get that thin line. Okay, so we have some, these are going to be the berries. I don't even know what they're called. It's like a vine, but then there's berries attached to them. So I did one on one side and one on the other, so they're kind of hanging out of the pumpkin. This is all the extra little accessories that you add to your bouquet. And then we have a 4 round brush. So back to the round brush, and I'm doing this spiral thing hanging out. So 2 of them, 1 on each side. Okay, I'm just going back over it again. So same color, but with the round brush, doing the spiral thing. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to my 12 flat, and I'm going to paint the little wheat things that are sticking up here. So Unbleached Titanium, using the full width of the brush, and I'm going to drag. So, and you can even grab a little bit of white. That's what I did. I double loaded in the white and Unbleached Titanium. So start in the middle part of the line and drag outwards, but angle up. I know my camera angle isn't really showing you exactly what I'm doing, but I'm starting in the middle. I'm dragging, so I'm kind of pressing hard at first, but letting go really fast, so it kind of goes a little bit feathery. You could even try this dry brush style, so you can wipe it off on your paper towel and do it dry brush, so it's kind of see-through. But I did that on both sides of this, so kind of drag the brush very gently, and you get that part of the little wheat stalks that are sticking out of the bouquet. Okay, and then I just added a tiny bit of white right there. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you how indecisive I was about the overlapping of these flowers. But what if I actually want one of these roses to be overlapping my sunflower? So I'm going to do it with this one at the top. If I decide in this painting I want this rose to be at the top, you would just go back over it. Of course, this is all dry. The sunflower is dry. So go back over it the same way that you painted it originally. So add the Napthol Crimson at the bottom. Go back with your different your tint of the red and your shade of the red, the dark and the light. And actually what I did with this rose is I added more strokes going all the way around, and that's how this rose ended up looking more detailed than the other rose. But I got my rose to be in the front instead of the back. Okay, and that is how you get your rose to be in the front if you're being indecisive like I am. We're going to do the berries next, and this is the only part of the painting that the orange shows up. So we're going to mix Napthol Crimson with Cad Yellow. So I'm mixing the two together about equal amounts right there, and to get an orange, and we're going to do some orange berries. So this is the round brush orange, and then on the little things that are hanging over the pumpkin that we painted, we're going to use our round brush to paint little circles, little bunches of circles. Okay, so I'm actually gonna add just a tiny bit of water in there to get it to be flowy, because it's a little thick right here, but not too much water. You don't want your circle to just start dripping everywhere. Okay, and I wanted these circles to be different shades of orange, so when I go reload my brush, I might add red on my brush instead of orange, and it would create a darker orange on my canvas when I paint it in. So the variations kind of give your berries, make your berries look like they have more dimension than if they were all the same shade of orange. Okay, and so I'm going to do that to both sides. Okay, and you can keep going with this and keep adding as many circles as you feel like it. I'm gonna actually rinse my brush off. I'm gonna do a darker color in here, so I'm gonna mix the black with the Napthol Crimson to get that deep shade of red, and that makes a nice berry color. So there's my darker color berry scattered in there. And I'm going to speed up this video just a bit here because this step is very simple, just a tad bit time consuming. You can see how I'm adding the various colors. Okay, you want to wait for this to dry, but I'm going to show you how to do some highlighting in here. And I'm just simply doing the titanium white with a nice clean brush. I'm just kind of adding a few white lines on the edges of my sunflowers, okay, just to kind of get my petals to pop a bit. And then on the berries, you can go in there, and I was a little sloppy when I did this. You kind of take your time here, but doing just a little tiny highlight on the berries just kind of gives it an added touch. That the light is kind of shining on those berries, or makes it look like they're more rounded. Okay, so I did that for all of those. So again, this part's a little time consuming. And then some of the pictures on the tutorial show that there's a little black outline as well on the petals. So I'm going to show you how I did this. I don't think I wrote this in the directions part because I'm actually really undecided if I like the black or not. But let me show you. If you wanted the little black outline to show on the petals, this kind of really helps to get those petals to be more defined. So just with the round brush, very gently with that black. We don't want it to take over. We don't want it to like look very solid, bold black lines. We want to be very thin, just kind of gently outlining some of these petals here, and you can see what happens. They kind of make it look like the petals are popping just a little bit more. But that is the end of this painting tutorial. So it's come to its conclusion. I hope that you enjoyed painting this very beautiful fall bouquet arrangement, and thank you for watching.